Okay, this is Reed fresh out of bed time. You guys are watching them too fast and catching up to me. I gotta my feet propped up here. Gotta get some Harry Potter read. Harry didn't say anything. He liked being back on speaking terms with Ron too much to speak his mind right now. But somehow thought that Hermione had gotten the point much better than Ron had. Oh, look, that's the end of the chapter. The next chapter is chapter 24, Rita Skeeter's Scoop. Okay, well, that was a short one. Everybody got up late on Boxing Day. Ooh, remember Boxing Day? The Gryffindor common room was much quieter than it had been lately, many yawns punctuating the lazy conversations. Hermione's hair was bushy again. She confessed to Harry that she had used liberal amounts of Sleekeazy's hair potion on it for the ball. But it's way too much bother to do every day, she said, matter-of-factly, scratching a purring Crookshanks behind the ears. Ron and Hermione seemed to have reached an unspoken agreement not to discuss their argument. They were being quite friendly to each other, though oddly formal. Ron and Harry wasted no time in telling Hermione about the conversation they had overheard between Madame Maxime and Hagrid. But Hermione didn't seem to find the news that Hagrid was half-giant nearly as shocking as Ron did. Well, I thought he must be, she said, shrugging. I knew he couldn't be pure giant because they're about 20 feet tall. But honestly, all this hysteria about giants, they can't all be horrible. It's the same sort of prejudice that people have toward werewolves. It's just bigotry, isn't it? Ron looked as though he would have liked to reply scathingly, but perhaps he didn't want another row, because he contented himself with shaking his head disbelievingly while Hermione wasn't looking. It was time now to think of homework they had neglected during the first week of the holidays. Everybody seemed to be feeling rather flat now that Christmas was over. Everybody except Harry, that is, who was starting once again to feel slightly nervous. The trouble was that February the 24th looked a lot closer from this side of Christmas, and he still hadn't done anything about working out the clue inside the golden egg. He therefore started taking the egg out of his trunk every time he went up to the dormitory, opening it, listening intently, hoping that this time it would make some sense. He strained to think what the sound reminded him of, apart from 30 musical saws that he had never heard anything else like it. He closed the egg, shook it vigorously, and opened it again to see if the sound had changed, but it hadn't. He tried asking the egg questions, shouting over all the wailing, but nothing happened. He even threw the egg across the room, though he hadn't really expected that to help. Harry had not forgotten the hint that Cedric had given him. But his less than friendly feelings towards Cedric just now meant that he was keen not to take his help if he could avoid it. In any case, it seemed to him that if Cedric had really wanted to give Harry a hand, he would have been a lot more explicit. He, Harry, had told Cedric exactly what was coming in the first task. And Cedric's idea of a fair exchange had been to tell Harry to take a bath. Well, he didn't need that sort of rubbish help. Not from someone who kept walking down the corridors hand in hand with Cho, anyway. And so the first day of the new term arrived, and Harry set off to lessons, weighted down with books, parchment, quills, as usual, but also with the lurking worry of the egg heavy in his stomach, as though he were carrying that sound with him too. Snow was still thick upon the grounds, and the greenhouse windows were covered in condensation so thick that they couldn't see out of them in herbology. Nobody was looking forward to care of magical creatures much in this weather, though, as Ron said, the Scroots would probably warm them up nicely, either by chasing them or blasting off so forcefully that Hagrid's cabin would catch on fire. When they arrived at Hagrid's cabin, however, they found an elderly witch with closely cropped hair and a very prominent chin standing before the front door. "Hurry up now, the bell rang 5 minutes ago," she barked at them as they struggled toward her through the snow. "Who are you?" said Ron, staring at her. "Where's Hagrid?" "My name is Professor Grubbly-Plank," she said briskly. "I am your temporary care of magical creatures teacher." "Where's Hagrid?" Harry repeated loudly. "He is indisposed," said Professor Grubbly-Plank shortly. Soft and pleasant laughter reached Harry's ears. He turned. Draco Malfoy and the rest of the Slytherins were joining the class. All of them looked gleeful, and none of them looked surprised to see Professor Grubbly-Plank. "This way, please," said Professor Grubbly-Plank. And she strode off around the paddock where the Beauxbatons horses were shivering. Harry, Ron, and Hermione followed her, looking back over their shoulders at Hagrid's cabin. All the curtains were closed. Was Hagrid in there, alone and ill? "What's wrong with Hagrid?" Harry said, hurrying to catch up with Professor Grubbly-Plank. "Never you mind," she said, as though she thought he was being nosy. "I do mind, though," said Harry hotly. "What's up with him?" Professor Grubbly-Plank acted as though she couldn't hear him. She led them past the paddock where the huge Beauxbatons horses were standing, huddled against the cold, and toward a tree on the edge of the forest where a large and beautiful unicorn was tethered. Many of the girls oohed at the unicorn. "Oh, it's so beautiful," whispered Lavender Brown. "How did she get it? They're supposed to be really hard to catch." The unicorn was brightly white. It made the snow all around look gray. It was pawing the ground nervously with its golden hooves and throwing back its horned head. "Boys, keep back!" barked Professor Grubbly-Plank, throwing out an arm and catching Harry hard in the chest. "They prefer the woman's touch, unicorns. Girls, to the front, and approach with care. Come on, easy does it." She and the girls walked slowly forward towards the unicorn, leaving the boys standing near the paddock fence, watching. The moment Professor Grubbly-Plank was out of earshot, Harry turned to Ron. "What do you reckon's wrong with him? You don't think a Scroot—" "Oh, he hasn't been attacked, Potter." "If that's what you're thinking," said Malfoy. "No, he's just too ashamed to show his big, ugly face. "What do you mean?" said Harry sharply. Malfoy put his hand inside his pocket of his robes and pulled out a folded page of newsprint. "There you go," he said. "Hate to break it to you, Potter." He smirked as Harry snatched the page, unfolded it, and read it, with Ron, Seamus, Dean, and Neville looking over his shoulder. It was an article topped with a picture of Hagrid looking extremely shifty. The title of the article is Dumbledore's Giant Mistake. Ho, ho, ho. Guess we'll read it next time.